Booyah!
As we were saying
What were you saying?
before we were cut off, last week's show got
That's right.
cut off prematurely. This is one of the downsides of doing a live stream. Y'all get to listen and follow live, which is cool. But as soon as there's a snafu, I think we had a power outage, just a flicker, boom, live stream goes, it won't restart. We can reset a show, but we decided not to because we'd done an hour and a half, and I think we reached the end of the main topic we were covering last week, which is sort of, it's going to be what I think we'll launch into again today. Last week, of course, we covered Israel's assassination of Nasrallah, Israel's bombardment of Lebanon, and Iran's retaliation with its impressive airstrikes. No major change there at the level of interstate conflict since then, but my God, Al Jazeera reports today, Sunday 13th, is day 9 since Israel has launched. It looks like something of a final solution in Gaza. Al Jazeera describes it as at least 300 people have been killed by Israeli forces as the military siege of northern Gaza enters a 9th day, with tens of thousands of Palestinians trapped by the ground invasion and drone strikes as food and water supplies dwindle. Separately for the north, Israel's Air Force expands its bombardment of Lebanon and targets civilian areas outside traditional Hezbollah bastions, including a 100-year-old mosque in a border village. There are, amazingly, still some doctors working in northern Gaza. Here's something written by one of them today or yesterday, Saturday, describing the situation there. Dr. Ezzeddin profile says he's a doctor in Gaza. I don't know much else about him. What is happening in northern Gaza is a real genocide. Today, the Israeli army forced us to flee for the third time from our previous place of refuge, threatening an area where more than 60,000 people live. People are walking through the streets not knowing where to go, walking as if they were heading to the gallows. The Indonesian hospital where I used to work has completely shut down due to continuous bombing. Yesterday, the Israeli army blocked a World Health Organization blood truck from entering hospitals in northern Gaza. We are facing organized genocide. I will continue to share updates. Don't stop talking about us. And he's got some photos of people leaving, whatever they can, donkeys, bicycles. Yeah. This looks like, what the Israelis kind of flagged and signaled and said they would be doing a year ago. Unofficially, they didn't. They'd say, no, we seek solution, blah, blah, blah. We're just trying to get Hamas. But the solution seems to be they are going to keep going. They're going to starve them to death. Reminds me of the Macbeth quote in Shakespeare. I am in blood, stepped in so far that, should I wade no more, returning were as tedious as going over. Shakespeare is saying here that Macbeth has involved himself in so many killings, it's as easy for him to carry on than to turn back.
It's a favorite quote of mine. I use that quite often.
Yeah.
Just randomly, at random small. Usually using it at a major major event at a turning point in history. I tend to use it whenever, I don't know, washing dishes or something. Washed half of them, and
I may as well.
Anyway, yeah, the BBC. I mean, the BBC, for all their faults and stuff, I mean, it's relative, but the BBC is the criticism of the BBC is of their bias and on being a mainstream media and blah 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 has to be seen in comparison to the rest of the mainstream media, right? some of which are much more biased. So for all their faults, in a rotten barrel, they're one of the less rotten apples, at least when it comes to, generally speaking, on most events. Maybe not so much in the Russia stuff, but particularly on Israel and Palestine, they come in for a lot of criticism from the Israelis for being pro-Palestinian, and using bad words like genocide, and but on this particular point that you're addressing, this particular issue, they had this report yesterday, just Israel attack on northern Gaza, hints at retired generals surrender or starve plan for war. Now this is, it's a plan that Israel has had for, really from the beginning. It's like, I don't know, the coincidence theorists' interpretation of history, which flies in the face of reason and rationale, is that Israel responded began all this on October 7th, or just after October 7th, when out of the blue, completely unexpected, the Israelis were attacked by Hamas out of the Gaza Strip, killing X number of Israelis at concerts and in kibbutzim and different things. And that this was the final straw. I can't take no more, and that is it, and we're going to have to deal with Hamas definitively. That all happened just spontaneously as a result of what Hamas did on October 7th. But to see it in that way, you have to be completely oblivious to the evidence and statements of many different types of Israelis and Israeli political and social and cultural life over the past 30 or 40 years, repeatedly, where they all have, in one way or another, said that we need to get rid of those Palestinians.
We need to finish the job.
Definitively.
Yeah.
Those Palestinians in Gaza in particular, and even the West Bank, we need all of them basically on the land of Israel. Are just a scourge, and we need to get rid of them. It's got to the point where it's just like they need to go. Someone
even said something like they're a stain on our conscience.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they are, in a certain sense. Not a stain on their conscience, but they're part of their conscience. And that's why it's actually, to use another literary reference, actually almost the same one, Lady Macbeth, in that play by Shakespeare that you were just quoting, there's a kind of well-known part in that where because she gets involved with the killing with Macbeth for power, basically. And she ends up, after one of these killings, with blood on her hands. And she gets a bit paranoid and delusional, and she starts imagining. She has visions of the blood on her hands, and she goes and she's washing her hands all the time, trying to get rid of this damn spot of blood that keeps reminding her of what she has done. And she gets very, worked up about this, to the point of mania and paranoia, and that's, in a sense, that's what the Palestinians represent to the Israelis, because the Israelis can't live peacefully in their and usher themselves and the whole world, we're meant to believe, into a golden era of a land of milk and honey, etc., and be a light onto the world and all that kind of stuff, while these Palestinians still exist, especially in the land of Israel, because they're a constant reminder to us and to the world, and they keep reminding the world that we stole their land, that we can't be this nation, a light onto the world, a nation of people who's a light onto the world, because what kind of a light onto the world would have stolen or dispossessed people, stolen land and dispossessed an entire population from Palestine in the 1930s and 40s, and then proceeded to treat the people who didn't leave, that you didn't expel, as second-class citizens, and then progressively mistreat them to greater and greater degrees over the years, to the point now that you're
exterminating them.
Yeah, so the fact that they exist is an impediment to that. The fact that Palestinians keep resisting is an impediment to the Israelis being able to imagine themselves as this wonderful, glorious nation that has inherited a land given to them by God, and that they're a wonderful nation in the world and all this kind of stuff. They can't do that while the Palestinians exist, and they get very, very angry, you know. It's like something that, you know, it's like you have a self-image of you being this wonderful person, but there's a ghost or a real person from your history who keeps hanging around your house with a sign saying, he abused me. And you're trying to tell everybody in the neighbourhood what a wonderful person you are and show them what a wonderful person you are, but this guy keeps hanging around pointing out that you're not the nice person that you're claiming to be, and you get very, very, very angry. And you really want to wipe that person out of existence, you know, after a while. So, and that's the kind of vehemence and the barbarity and the brutality that the Israelis are displaying towards the Palestinians. That's where it comes from. It's fairly understandable from a psychological perspective, if aberrant psychology, let's say, or some kind of psychopathology maybe. So yeah, they want them gone. And so, like I said, the idea that this all happened just spontaneously on October 7th and Israel just decided that, well, let's just follow this plan that we just invented just now after October 7th is nonsense when you look at the history of Israelis, politicians, military personnel, historians, and various other types, all saying the same thing, which is we need to destroy these Palestinians utterly, completely. All we need, and they've gone as far as actually saying that all we need is the right opportunity. It's very similar to 9/11 in that respect. Where
did Hamas gift that to them then?
Huh?
I know you've got two versions of what happened October 7th. The official one is they came in, they just killed indiscriminately. But then Hamas's version is, oh no, we targeted Israeli military sites and only personnel where possible. And that the vast majority of the victims who were civilian were killed by the Israeli response. Okay, but either way, you end up by having this mass Operation Al-Aqsa. You know what the Israelis are like. You know they've been waiting for the opportunity to do what they're doing now. Was it like a mass suicide attack, even if strictly military, as far as Hamas thought they were doing it? Because you've ended up...
What do you mean a mass suicide attack?
Well, if we go out, they're going to come back in and...
No.
Maybe they underestimated the response.
They didn't... Well, no, they didn't underestimate it. Hamas went in there to attack primarily Israeli military, maybe take hostages. For sure they had a plan to take hostages, which they've done in the past. Military hostages, maybe civilian hostages, probably. But their plan was, I mean, they abide by the rules of conflict for the most part, apart from taking hostages. Well, is hostages part of the... Is it against the Geneva Conventions? I don't know. Anyway, it's part of pretty standard warfare, right, where you will take hostages, like it's happened in every war. And then you trade them, right? So, as far as they're concerned, standard rules of war, we attack the military, we take hostages of whatever type and use them to bargain for our own people. That's what they planned. And on that basis, they had no reason to expect that there was going to be, it was going to precipitate a campaign by Israel to destroy all of Gaza. What justified what we've been seeing over the past year is this. And this is just a series of headlines from about 1 year ago. So a week or so after October 7th, Hamas cut the throat to babies in massacre, an act of sheer evil, horror at pure evil, beheading of babies, inhuman. Hamas killed 40 babies, beheading some and massacre of women. 40 babies murdered by Hamas. Israel shows mutilated babies, massacre of innocents. So that's what that series of headlines and many more that were produced in the same way is what is the political capital that Israel used, or provided the political capital for Israel to do what it's been doing for the past year. So they needed that. They needed all dead, massacre of babies, massacre of people, blah, blah, blah. But there really isn't any evidence apart from these articles, which lead people to believe that there is evidence, but there isn't really any evidence that Hamas did any of those things. And not only that, but there's evidence that it was the Israelis who actually did most of the killing of civilians. Again, that provides the opportunity, right? So Hamas were conned in that respect. If they had learned anything from, if they had studied 9/11, for example, and if they understood the nature of 9/11 And if they looked at the PNAC document that came out just a year before 9/11, where these neocons were talking about needing to project American military power around the world in order to prop up American global hegemony into the 21st century, that they needed to be able to do that, to re-galvanize, retool the entire US military and project its power all around the world to, like I said, prop up the US empire. But they wouldn't be able to do that, actually, send US troops all around the world without some kind of a galvanizing event to, get public opinion behind that move. And it would be like, and they said literally like something like a new Pearl Harbor, i.e. where we are attacked, egregiously attacked, unprovoked.
We'll use public opinion to launch wars.
We'll use that wound, and then the wound came in the form of 9/11. Of course, we're not going to get 9/11 here, but it's very convenient. So,
well, Israel was making sure Americans understood that October 7th was our 9/11.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yes, that's basically how it happened, and Israel has been planning for this for a very long time. And they themselves have said for many years that they did need to, and were going to at some point wipe out all of the Palestinians, and that all they needed was the right opportunity. And a lot of them said the time back then wasn't right. It wasn't, just wasn't right. We couldn't justify it right now, but we will have at some point have the justification to do it, and we will do it. The justification came on October 7th. How did October 7th happen? When it happened, it hasn't happened in 60 years previous. Hamas had never been able to do such a thing. There was apparently there appears to have been some kind of a stand-down order, some kind of complicity, some kind of letting it happen on purpose, and also, like I said, evidence for Israeli involvement in the killing of civilians, to provide this emotionally laden propaganda offensive that they used afterwards to justify what they've been doing today. So all of it points, for any rational person, all of it points to it being contrived, and Hamas being kind of duped to a large extent, led in, invited in, come and attack me, and then I will use that to justify doing what I've wanted to do for many years. It's not like super complicated psychologically. You know what I mean? It's quite devious and Machiavellian, but hello, if you were of that kind of a nature, you just look. If you're a kind of psychotype and you just look at these kind of things, like here we have a problem. We want to wipe out the Palestinians, but we don't have the justification, like in the international, in the eyes of the international community, we don't have the justification to wipe out the Palestinians. How are we going to get that justification? Well, I mean, we need to generate a lot of sympathy first, really. Like we need to be attacked, really, in a really bad, really kind of horrific way by the Palestinians who we want to wipe out. They need to really attack us in a horrific, and it needs to be something we can project around the world in the media, like dead babies, beheaded babies, that kind of thing. The worst kind of atrocities. And then we'll be able to do what we've always wanted to do. And it's weird because that's just pure cold logic. But it's rejected as conspiracy theory or something by a lot of people who think to themselves, well, that can't be true. That has to be bullshit because I wouldn't do that. That's inhuman. Nobody would go that far.
Yeah.
To kill their own people in order to justify attacking someone else. Like a false flag, basically, right?
Yeah.
But if you remove the emotional component to it, it's a very simple solution to a problem. I mean, that's the weird thing about it, is because anybody sitting down and they had no emotions whatsoever, and if you presented me with that kind of problem, I go, well, yeah, if I had no emotions whatsoever, no moral compunction about anything, I would just say, well, just do that. It's obvious, and it is obvious. I mean, you've got a problem.
Yeah, there's a flaw in the cold logic.
In what logic?
There's a flaw in the cold logic.
Yeah.
A year later, that political capital has run out. Even with the people who accept that Hamas egregiously and flagrantly, like the people who would believe history started on October 7th, 2023, themselves are like, okay, this is too much. Like, no, wait a minute, this is, no. You know what I mean? The political capital of what Israel was justified as revenge in its...
Right, you mean the international community is turning
it's run
against
out.
them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's only Israelis who believe, who fully go with the rationale that, oh, awesome, we are fully justified in eliminating 2 million people.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And they're kind of self-aware that that's not really justified, so they've never quite said it outright, but they're trying to, day by day, make it a reality.
It's more about getting it started.
Yeah.
You need to get it started. And those headlines that we showed you after October 7th about beheading babies and all that kind of stuff, that was enough to launch the campaign. It's very hard to stop it, or for anybody to tell you to stop, because like now you've got your narrative, which is we need, and especially the hostages, we need to get the hostages back. But like throughout all of this, it's very clear that the hostages, the Israeli hostages, were being used by Israel to justify the continuation of the war, i.e. the Israeli government did not want and does not want any hostages back. They're there to justify the continuation of the assault on Gaza. If you get all your hostages back, then you have no more, just because you've achieved one of your major aims. Okay, you can still say we want to destroy Hamas, but at least half of your justification for what you're doing in Gaza has been removed by getting the hostages back. So and that's an emotional component as well. Destroy Hamas is like, okay, yeah, maybe whatever, but our people, for the local, for the Israeli population, they're your brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers who are being held hostage there. That emotional hold that the hostages gives you over the Israeli population is very important. But even so, they were Israelis. That didn't work very well either, because a lot of Israelis were protesting, saying against Netanyahu, saying, make a deal now and get those hostages back. We know you can get them back. You just have to make a deal. And
they know, because they actually did a few initial ceasefires and they did get hostages back. Yeah. And that made Hamas look good.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, this is bad.
That's a bad idea. Let's not do that again.
Let's stop doing that. Then they reverted to the atrocity in one of the camps near that pier, that stupid pier the Americans built, which worked for like 3 months, and stopped working the day it was used, it seems, as a Trojan horse, literally, to send in IDF into that camp.
Yep.
Kill 300 people to rescue 4 hostages.
Yep. And probably kill the hostages themselves.
I don't know, but...
Well, they got a couple of them, but they did actually kill them.
Since then, I think they've been telling the Israelis in their own press that, I know it's dried up, but look what happened the last time we tried to save some of our boys. Well, yeah, it was a disaster. I think the Israelis all got out, but 300 dead Palestinians because they launched airstrikes as part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but they know damn well that kind of put a stop to what they've been doing previously, which was truces, negotiated truces. Hamas would release hostages. Mm. Israeli media would come and welcome them with the Red Cross and the UN, and it looked great. It should have looked great, but to the Israeli elite, that was bad, really bad, because it was putting a halt on the whole rationale for what they want. Yeah. Gaza just razed to the ground.
Yeah. So just go back to the BBC article there. If you scroll down, it's probably like more than halfway. There's a picture of a dude in a shirt, an old guy in a shirt. Right, so just above that. So at its heart is the idea that Israel can force the surrender of Hamas and its leader by increasing the pressure on the entire population of the north. The first step is to order civilians to leave along evacuation corridors that will take them south of Wadi Gaza, an east-west stream that has become a dividing line in Gaza since the invasion. This dude believes Israel should have done a deal straight away to get the hostages back, even if it meant pulling out of Gaza entirely, which is what a lot of Israelis also were protesting for. But a year later, he says other methods are necessary. And then he says down below, since we already encircled the northern part of Gaza in the past 9 or 10 months, what we should do is the following thing: to tell all 300,000 residents, the UN estimates 400,000, who still live in northern Gaza, that they have to leave this area and they should be given 10 days to leave through the safe corridors. After that time, all this area will become a military zone, and all Hamas people will still, all the Hamas people will still, though, whatever, whether some of them are fighters, some of them are civilians, will have 2 choices: either to surrender or to starve. He wants Israel to seal the areas once the evacuation orders are closed. Anyone left behind would be treated as an enemy combatant. The area would be under siege, with the army blocking all supplies of food, water, or other necessities of life from going in. The pressure would become unbearable, and what is left of Hamas would rapidly crumble, freeing the surviving hostages and giving Israel the victory it craves. But the UN World Food Programme says the current offensive in Gaza is having a disastrous impact on food security for thousands of Palestinian families. The main crossings into northern Gaza have been closed, and no food aid has entered the strip since the 1st of October. That's 12 days ago. Mobile kitchens and bakeries have been forced to stop work because of airstrikes. The only functioning bakery in the north caught fire after it was hit by an explosive munition.
The position in the south is almost as dire. Where are they supposed to go? They're bombing
Nowhere.
in the south.
But that's the thing. It's basically like an animal, like a
They've already
cat,
done
like a
this.
cat torturing a mouse, or some bigger animal torturing smaller animals. Like, oh yeah, go over here, and then over there you get smacked
Get
as well. Go sorry, don't go there. Go here. Oh, sorry, we're bombing there as well. Sorry, you got bombed. Why don't you go back to the first place where we bombed you earlier on? Go there. It's pure psychopathic.
The testimony I read earlier, the doctor, I think he's accurate when he says this is the third time we have to move. The 400,000 in northern Gaza have already gone south.
Mm-hmm.
They returned north.
They go back north.
Practically to ruins, set up rudimentary. The World Food Programme has been in there, but not since October 1st.
This is just a bunch of psychos trying to find a way. They're trying to play the PR game. They're doing it obviously very bad. I mean, how do you when your plan is to attack and maim and kill 1.5 to 2 million people in a small area, to kill them, as many as you can, but in that process to force the rest to flee. But you don't want it to look like that to the rest of the world, that's what you're trying to do. Use all sorts of bullshit narratives about safe zones, and we're going to make a closed area
corridors
here to get the terrorists, corridors here. It's all bullshit. Their plan is to, by hook or by crook and whatever conniving way they can do it, they want to empty the Gaza Strip.
Yeah.
The Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, of which there are 2 million, can either leave in body bags or not at all, leave in pieces, or they can leave at the point of starvation when it's become unbearable to live there. But either way, they're all leaving. One way or the other, they're going.
Yeah.
But we have to bullshit the global community and keep support going for us, that we're fighting this humanitarian anti-terrorist operation. We're masking this genocide of 2 million people as a humanitarian anti-terrorist operation, and we have to keep spinning that narrative in all sorts of different ways. But you just look at the facts and look at even what they're saying. Like, I mean, that if you just go back to the article, ultra-nationalist extremists in Netanyahu's cabinet. Now, usually you hear when people report, and media reports about ultra-national extremists, you don't usually follow that up by saying in the ruling party's cabinet. They usually say ultra-national extremists on the fringe of British politics or on the fringe of French politics or not in power. Yeah. But in Israel, it's ultra-national extremists in Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet want to replace Palestinians in northern Gaza with Jewish settlers. There's the plan.
Right.
Wipe them all out. Among many statements he's made on the subject, the finance minister, who is an ultra-nationalist extremist, Bezalel Smotrich, not his real name probably, has said, "Our heroic fighters and soldiers are destroying the evil of Hamas, and we will occupy the Gaza Strip. To tell the truth, where there is no Israeli settlement, there is no security."
Yeah.
I.e., all of Palestine and all the areas where Palestinians live have to become Israeli settlements. Now, as far as I'm aware, Palestinians don't live in Israeli settlements by default, right? That's not a Palestinian town when it's an Israeli settlement. So that kind of wording implies the removal of all Palestinians from quote-unquote historic Israel, one way or another.
Yeah. And so they proceed. They're so far they're getting everything they want. course. But there is pushback, though. I mean, more and more, I saw like in the European Parliament, some Slovenian MEP get up and demand sanctions on Israel, no more weapons to Israel. Basically doing to Israel what was done to Russia, but, real sanctions, whatever. No more support for Jewish settlements and so on.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of language, the kind of rhetoric that before October 7th, that was the job of like far left pro-Palestinian MEPs,
Mm-hmm.
which comes to mind the two Irish MEPs who lost in the last European Parliament elections and were not re-elected. So at the time I thought, well, there goes Palestine's voice in the European Parliament. But things have changed. You've got normie types
Mm-hmm.
in their suits representing their moderate centrist parties at all kinds of levels, whether it's in Strasbourg or in Geneva. They're starting to sound like anti-empire leftists when it comes to Israel, because Israel has gone so far and has brought this to the situation where it's beginning to dawn on them that Israel is going to try to exterminate all of them.
Mm-hmm.
The N word is on. It's just about on people's lips. The comparison with Nazi Germany,
Mm-hmm.
just about. It has been on the fringes and online, and I know lots of people refer to it. But I'm talking about like in the halls of power that Israel tries so hard to censor, control, influence, lobby, blackmail, etc.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you see even the BBC. There have been a couple of leaks recently where anonymous, sort of maybe BBC whistleblowers, their faces blacked out or on camera saying that it was policy while I was working at the BBC never to speak bad of Israel.
Mm.
You could say anything you want about anything else, not Israel. There was an injunction against it. So even despite such injunctions, people are speaking up,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
the one exception is Germany. Germany's really gone. Like arresting kids for waving Palestinian flags and stuff. I mean,
Germans, they can only expiate their World War II guilt by
going full Nazi with the Israelis.
Yeah, not in so many words, but yeah, they wouldn't say it in those words, but to back Israel come hell or high water for the Palestinians.
Here's how ostracized Israel is in the court of international opinion, which counts for something. It will eventually count for something. People I know, anti-empire lefties are wringing their hands saying, why does no one help them? But there's a sea change coming. So Israel's foreign minister got called Israel Katz yesterday declared the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres persona non grata in Israel, quote, because of his failure to condemn Iran's missile attack and what Katz described as, quote, anti-Semitic and anti-Israel conduct. I mean, that's what I mean. Guterres is obviously a normie trying to keep things on a nice, moderate, he's pro the global agenda, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And yet Israel is too far beyond the pale, even for that, which gives a wide berth to imperial interests, on whatever Israel wants. The IDF has now targeted this Irish company in the UNIFIL peacekeeping force on the Israel-Lebanon border twice, wounding soldiers. The official Dublin line remains unchanged. We're not moving. I think the latest is that there's been another attack on one of the camps. I'm not sure which one. But here's a map of these of the border area. This has been the case since the 80s, so this isn't like Israel is making this an issue now because it's literally gunning for them. It wants them out of the way because it wants to go into Lebanon and who knows? Do to them what they're doing to Gaza. So there in the bottom of the screen, right on the Israeli border,
Go ahead.
you've got the Irish contingent. It's just one of several. There's a Ghanaian one, Italian, Polish in the north, South Korean, and so on. Together, these make up the UNIFIL deployment, and they've been rotating in and out of there since the 1980s. Permanent feature. It's not like a new problem Israel's had to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 40 years have passed, and Israel is now, not for the first time, but it's seriously threatening to start basically shooting at them, to just get them out of the way. Here's Benjamin Netanyahu just yesterday.
Because they're being used as human shields by Hamas or by Hezbollah, don't you know? The UNIFIL UN troops.
Yeah,
They're human shields.
That's rubbish, of course, because just
Everybody's
last year, an Irish soldier was killed, probably by Hezbollah, probably accidentally. No one's quite sure. He was shot, though, by someone. So it's about 50-50, the number of incidents over the decades.
Everyone I don't like is a human shield.
Yeah. This is BB yesterday. If we can play this, I think he says that in Hebrew and in English as well. He's giving orders to the UN Secretary General.
I'd like to appeal directly to the UN Secretary General. It is time for you to remove UNIFIL from Hezbollah's strongholds and from the fighting areas. The IDF has repeatedly asked for this and has been met with repeated refusals, all aimed at providing a human shield to Hezbollah terrorists. The refusal to evacuate the UNIFIL soldiers makes them hostages of Hezbollah. This endangers both them and the lives of our soldiers.
Mr. Secretary General, get the UNIFIL forces out of harm's way. It should be done right now, immediately.
So there you go. The leader of the country that has just declared the UN Secretary General persona non grata is also ordering him to remove the UN peacekeeping force. Obviously with a view to having to launch a ground invasion.
Mm-hmm. Or bomb the whole area.
Or just, soften it up. Exactly like you were saying before. I mean, the Israelis, they something like 25 Israeli soldiers were wounded officially yesterday. And that's without even actually getting into Lebanon. That was just engaging in firefights with Hezbollah over the border. They need to do a lot of bombing first, because Nasrallah may be gone, but Hezbollah isn't.
It's a very mountainous area as well. The whole of Lebanon almost.
Yeah. Actually, I've got I didn't realize I have it. This is, I think, let's play it. This is the Slovenian MEP in the European Parliament yesterday. Like I said, this is striking because this is no kind of anti-empire lefty. More and more sort of normie types are doing this.
Strong sanction against Israel. Europe and US must stop sending Israel arms. Our weapons are killing innocent people. Israel bombed 7 different countries in the last week. More than 1 million people are already fled Lebanon, and the world leaders are saying nothing. We must impose strong sanction against Israel, suspend the association agreement, ban trade with the settlements, sanction extremists on all sides, including the Israel government. We demand action now. The agony must end. Thank you.
Big applause, big applause. So the situation here is such that Israel's political capital it's gone to zero. They're in a dangerous place now because your liberal types, their care foundation is pinged so badly because of what's happening in both Gaza and the West Bank and in Lebanon, that like you can forgive them for the for their stance on Russia-Ukraine, because for them history began on February 24th, 2022, when big bad Russia invaded little Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Aggressor, smaller country.
Yeah, yeah.
But here, October 7th worked for a while, but it is not working anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, it's just the wanton slaughter of civilians and the bullshit reasons they give to try and justify it, you know.
And
that rubs people the wrong way, you know. Anybody who still has a bit of conscience and actually cares, you know, isn't going to stand around. And there's far too few of those people who feel that way and who are also willing to stand up and actually say something about it to people who have a voice, you know. So it is pretty dire in that respect. There should be far more. It's like a real indictment on the world, that the whole world is sitting by watching Israel. It hasn't happened before, you know, in modern history. Let's say in the last 100 years, since the dawn of civilization.
what
Which is the last 100 years. It hasn't. What's happening in Gaza hasn't happened. Where you have the freedom-loving West, all supporting, for the most part, the mass murder of civilians by a country that claims to be part of the freedom-loving West, who's what people assume is a country that claims it's a Western democracy, loves freedom. It's just like you guys, as its people. It's a Jewish state, and there are Jews all over the West, particularly in America, and America in particular, and a lot of European countries are all actively supporting the mass murder of tens of thousands of innocent civilians, men, women and children, particularly women and children, in front of everybody's faces. And you're meant to say, this is good, this is okay. All you're meant to say really is Israel has a right to defend itself. Mm-hmm. It has never happened, like not in the worst excesses of the Americans, the Brits, throughout the 20th century, has this kind of situation happened where they got to openly, publicly commit mass murder, and not just mass murder, but like I'm talking here tens of thousands, 100,000 people and counting, the vast majority of them civilians, the majority of them women and children, in front of the TV cameras, and everybody says that's good. Everybody, or at least just goes, well, it's unfortunate, but there you go. There's no mechanism through which to stop those people, and they themselves have lost any pretense of trying to keep a civilized face. I mean, America still attempts to do it, but America is actually the reason that this is happening. As much as Israel is the psychopath in action here, America is the bigger psychopath who is facilitating the smaller psychopath in the form of the Israeli government to commit mass murder against innocent civilians. And the Western world watch, ordinary people sit and watch it, and very, very few of them say there's no protest, there's no mass protest in the street. This is meant to be the pinnacle of Western civilization, of the Enlightenment, you know. Enlightenment values, democracy, freedom, the rights of man, is presiding over the mass slaughter of tens of thousands of innocent men, women and children. In public view. Not only in public view, but they actually tell you to shut up and call you names if you say there's anything wrong with that. When has that happened before? I mean, the American government, the British government, British militaries do bad things in war, have done bad things in war, and it's come out like My Lai in Vietnam and the different, you know,
Iraq,
the stuff they did in Iraq, but never in this flagrant, right in front of your face and, you know, justified kind of way, you know. When it happened in other occasions like Iraq or in Vietnam or whatever, and it came out, they had to kind of like bow their heads and at least feign shame and say this shouldn't happen and should never happen. Here they're basically saying this, not only should this happen, but it's good that it's happening. I mean, at least that's how they're acting.
Yeah.
So I think it may actually be a. What do you think about the prospects of some kind of a major Middle Eastern war involving Iran, obviously, for it to be major? What's going on there?
Um,
Don't we have a little article about a bit of news that came out?
yeah, yeah. No, I suppose the answer is no, because well, that's the case you've been making ever since
Have I?
the tit for tat started.
I don't know though.
Well, the pattern goes back a
not
few
black and white.
years.
Yeah.
It goes back a few years. Ever since Iran shot down its first Reaper drone in, I think, the summer of 2020 or earlier, 2019. People go, whoa, first strike, World War III. Nothing happens, and then there's another one back in the other direction, and so on. This leader's killed, that embassy's hit, wave of strikes, Soleimani's killed. 4 days later, mourning ends in Iran, flag of revenge goes up, strikes against US base in northern Iraq. Lots of head injuries, but no one killed. Like, how did that happen? Then
Concussive brain injuries.
concussive brain injuries.
Not head injuries. Whatever concussive brain injuries mean.
But no one died officially.
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, I think I know what you're getting at. So, what do they have there? Jeez, I can't find it. We speculated that Iran's airstrikes against Israel beginning of this month in retaliation for the assassination of Nasrallah and Israel's terror bombing of southern Lebanon was in some sense contrived. That is, a negotiated strike whereby some kind of message gets out to Israel, maybe via Washington, maybe via other countries, that we're going to do this to you. It's only going to be limited in its potential. We'll only hit these places, these kinds of places.
You have?
No.
Okay.
I don't, but I can look for it. It was the Iran Observer. I don't know how reliable a source this is. They're great on Twitter, but you often can't follow up. It's got 500,000 followers. It seems to have an inside track or sources in the Iranian government because they often break. Here I found it. They often break kind of policy or strategic announcements from Tehran that no one's ever heard. And then maybe a few days later you do hear something more official. So anyway, this popped up yesterday. And it says the source is Shafak, which may be an Iranian news agency. I couldn't find it, actually, to be honest. Or Shafak as a person. I don't know. Anyway, on the face of it, this fits our analysis, your analysis of how great power war is conducted, at least between major countries. Obviously not between Hezbollah.
Nuclear powers.
Between nuclear powers, exactly. This also gives away that Iran already has nukes. Israel asked Iran via the Persian Gulf states, Qatar or whoever, for a symbolic strike to save face. This is why Israel has delayed its response to Iran's wave of strikes early October.
Yeah.
That strikes us as being accurate, or being the kind of thing that happens in back channels all the time, even between quote-unquote mortal enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, this supports our contention that Iran is already a nuclear power. Israel knows that, and therefore the MAD, mutual assured destruction threshold, is in play for both Israel and Iran's considerations of what they do to the other side.
Right. So the official version of events is Iran fires all these ballistic missiles at Israel. Iran says we have struck a serious blow to the evil Zionist entity, and it will surely fall one of these days. The world will be a much better place when Israel has been wiped from the pages of history. And then Israel says Iran has made a massive mistake. We're going to deal a blow to them that will make
to this unprovoked attack.
Yeah,
which in a sense it was strictly.
Iran we will deal them a blow that will destroy them and will destroy all of their. And Iran is our mortal enemy, and Iran is the worst country in the world. It's a source of every single act of terrorism everywhere in the world. That kind of rhetoric is what you get publicly. Mm-hmm. According to this, behind the scenes, you get phone call intermediary via the UAE. So about those, or the first one will be, hi, is this Israel? Yeah, okay, that's Iran. Look, we're going to fire some missiles at you. Bunch of ballistic missiles. It'll be a good show. You're probably not going to be able to intercept a lot of them, but we're going to target mainly these two air bases. So if you
mainly just a runway.
If you want to get get your planes out of the way and stuff out of the way, it'll be happening sometime on the evening of that. So just a heads up there, okay? All right, thanks, Iran. See you later. And then
I don't think it happens quite so. And then, it happens through mediation.
Huh? Yeah, no, but that's but that's the tone. I'm drawing a comparison here between the official public way that it's presented, and then the response to that is, put that one back up, Scotty, will you? The response to that is, hi, is this Iran? Yeah, this is Israel. About we got that strike there the other day. Okay, went to plan. Nobody died. Nobody died. Didn't do any damage really. Thanks, but yeah, it was a good show. And so
the thing is, we look weak now. So
yeah, we're gonna have to respond, like just for the public, obviously. So we're gonna have to respond. So we'd like to respond with a symbolic strike of our own. So here's some options. We're just throwing these out here. You let us know. Get back to us with which is your preferred location for us to hit. But again, obviously, you understand it's just going to be for public opinion. All good. So how's the kids? Yeah, okay, all right. See you later. Bye. That's what goes on behind the scenes compared to the evil Zionist entity
and World War III any minute.
Yeah, and sponsor for terrorism. Yeah, I mean that's super cynical take on it, right? But the fact of the matter is people are dying in amongst this. Obviously the Palestinians. It implies that the Iranians are super cynical about their supposed empathy and care for the Palestinians and what's being done to the Palestinians is only skin deep. They don't really care about them.
Iran's state ideology is the great Satan and the little Satan. Mm-hmm. We must get the little Satan out of the Middle East and then better for the Middle East, and that'll keep the great Satan America back. Yeah. The whole, ever since the Islamic Revolution of 1979, it's the state ideology. Mm-hmm. So you can understand why they would at least pay lip service to it, because in the West, that's what we do. Democracy, making the world safer. Democracy, the whole war against Russia and laundering billions to Ukraine, we can't actually say we're doing it. Occasionally they do speak the truth. We're doing it to rebuild our industrial base back home in the United States. They kind of let the Republicans in on that. Guys, you got to support. Of course, it's not ready for democracy, but we're saying that publicly. It's about getting the jobs and the money. But that's still the state ideology, so you have to speak it. So Iran would too. So Nasrallah, bless him, he went to his grave. I don't know how naive, but presume he did believe or hope that Iran would have his back all the way. And it did, in a sense. Iran had to do that to Israel to uphold its constellation of alliances in Yemen, with the PMOs in northern Iraq, with Hezbollah, to show we're right behind you. Although when you get assassinated, we'll do a symbolic strike. We can't actually take out Israel. We'll do it symbolically.
But and Iran allows for its kind of, let's say, high level personnel, military and political personnel, to be taken out. But they don't take out Israelis.
Yes, they're not ready to, or they can't.
But that implies that they want to and that they would. That is not all contrived in the way I was presenting it. Obviously, Nasrallah is being killed. Other Hezbollah members are being killed. Iranians are being killed. No Israelis as yet, like as in high level Israelis or even civilians, are being killed.
The thing is, the next one could actually kill Israeli soldiers or politicians.
Right. But then
There's always that. You have a ladder.
Right. But that point it becomes real then.
We suspect the Russians did actually try to whack the Defense Secretary of the United States.
Yeah.
And the Americans saved face by pretending he got cancer.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's how fucking close that came.
But that doesn't destroy America.
No.
Again, that's not, so you have to try and figure out if there's a way to view this where these supposed high-level members of a government of any particular country are expendable. All of them are expendable. All of them are expendable. Up to a certain point, but almost all of them are expendable, and it's not going to be a fatal blow to the country or to the actual government. People who run the government aren't anywhere near any combat zone. They're not stupid enough, like Lloyd Austin, not as stupid as him, to actually go to the war for profit that they're waging. Lloyd Austin is probably his history and a military history, and he's a true believer. But he'll go to Ukraine and put himself in harm's way and nearly get killed by a Russian strike. The people who actually run America, they're not that stupid. It's like, for them, someone like Lloyd Austin is similar to someone believing in
the ideology.
in Jesus or Yahweh.
Yeah.
They're dupes,
democracy.
they're fools, they bought they're too stupid, And to that extent, that makes them expendable, because that ideology, that belief, when they're all in, they become expendable because they end up doing things that puts them at risk, because they believe this really is a fight for freedom and democracy. We really are protecting the Ukrainian people. We really are fighting an evil Russian empire that wants to take over all of Europe and then America. He believes all that. And so, based on that belief, he goes to Ukraine, hangs out with the soldiers, and gets gets thrown arse over tit. So it's hard to know who's actually, are there people in each of these respective governments who have this cynical view of it all? And is there a point where it becomes real for all of them, where they're willing to? Because right now it's all like, America doesn't want war in the Middle East because it would affect, especially before an election, because it would affect oil prices, or they don't want it. They want oil prices or the global economy to be screwed up, because that would affect them in terms of, it might have direct effects on their countries, on their economies. So they don't want to do anything too crazy that would wreck the economy in the Middle East and, by extension, much of the rest of the world.
Yeah.
They're not willing to do that, because that would be too close to home. They're not putting themselves in danger, but in terms of just the function of their country, their ability to run the country, would be compromised. So they draw back from that. But is there a point where they say, fuck it? It's just as cynical in a certain sense, but they go, we don't care anymore. And does this maybe have something to do with our hypothesized kind of end game that the Americans have in their geopolitical war against Russia and China to stave off the impending collapse of America's empire and American global hegemony, that we hypothesize that they see coming, a multipolar world, that they can't stop it. They're doing everything they can. They're doing as much as they can without going full retard on it, but they're doing as much as they can, starting proxy war in Ukraine to kind of like contain these countries. They're arming Taiwan. They're doing all sorts of shenanigans around in Asia and stuff, politicking and military bases, whatever, to kind of hold them back. But at a certain point, where that tide of the multipolar world led by Russia and China starts to break through, well, then is that the time to push the button? And is the button the activation, which they, again, based on this hypothesis, they could do at any point they want, where they could ignite a major war in the Middle East. And the point of igniting a major war in the Middle East, which would very likely end up in the destruction of Israel, would be at America's initiation. They would take off the restraints or force it to happen in some way. And by blowing up the Middle East, that would be their trump card against the burgeoning multipolar world, effectively wrecking the global economy in a kind of snowball effect or a chain.
And wrecking it
effect.
for a future Donald Trump as president.
Wreck it all, thereby taking down economically at least, taking down your main peer competitors, Russia and China, and then out of the dust, when the dust settles, then you re-emerge. You emerge, you hope you've kind of insulated yourself enough, and you emerge then in a new world order even, where you have the opportunity then to become quickly, or you almost immediately are in the ascendant again, and you reset the clock on the new American century.
They hope, maybe.
Is that the plan? But in that scenario, Israel is the dupe. Israel is simply the bait and the ignition switch, or the detonator, and Israel will be destroyed in the process. So as much as we dislike the Israelis and the way that they're acting, and dislike is a euphemism for detest, abhor, and are disgusted by the Israelis, they are not
in that
really,
scenario are holding the can.
Yeah, they're not the big bad guys. The movers
The big bad guys make sure they're 2 oceans away from anyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
where they've
the Israelis
been printing $5 trillion since COVID.
Right.
And as Putin said, they're using the cash before they know the dollar will lose its value to hoard as much stuff as possible for such a time as
collapse. Yeah. And if there's nowhere else I can think of where you could initiate a global economic catastrophe than nowhere better than
Ukraine isn't
blowing up the Middle
reliable
East.
because Ukraine is not reliable because Russia could
Sustain it.
Yeah. The Middle East would be because you've got religion and nukes, and Iran's kind of screwed as well. I do have sympathy for the real politics in Iran. It's been 4 years since Soleimani's assassination, where I was disgusted at how they sold him out. Because we know, I mean, that wasn't ever quite articulated in the press, but we do know that Trump was speaking to Iran via Switzerland about the Iranian response. Okay, so you're going to strike us back, symbolic strike, Al-Assad airbase in northern Iraq. Okay, yeah. And Trump, of course, boasted about that. But he kept his mouth shut about any prospective call that came before. And so the idea would be that Soleimani was deliberately cut loose by the real politicers in Iran, who would have known he was about to be assassinated on his way home from Saudi Arabia.
It could be that there's
cynical, but
a hidden hand within the US.
Iran is tied by its ideology to rid the Middle East of the Zionist entity.
Yeah, but they're behind even. I mean, it's the overt government in Iran that is aware of this, because they're the ones doing they were the ones having the conversations. They're the ones doing the back channel conversations where, like, we'll hit you, then you hit us, then you hit us, then blah blah blah. So they're not dupes in that respect. They're not true believers in that ideology. They realize that at the end of the day, they're not going all in to save the Palestinian people. They're not going all in to save Hezbollah. That there's an order in the Middle East, and sure, we're jostling for position here, but we're not going. None of us are going to blow it up. So, but there may be a hidden hand in the US beyond that kind of
that will push us both
that
into
can
that.
At a certain point surprise all of them, and whoever gets hit first goes, hang on a minute,
that wasn't negotiated.
We didn't agree with that nuke you just dropped. I mean, at that, there's no call obviously at that point. It's like, holy shit, they're scrambling and they realize that they gotta
it's also
go all in.
Also
it's
them.
It's on,
yeah. Maybe, but in the meantime, yeah. So, if that's hanging over our heads, or is just beyond the periphery of what we see,
it's potential.
Then the doomers, despite being wrong or right to be sounding the alarm about World War III and Armageddon and the danger of nukes, they're right, but not quite for the reasons they think.
But I don't think nukes will necessarily be involved, even though we mentioned them. I don't think nukes will be involved.
They can still keep it conventional.
Yeah.
Here's something I want to highlight. Maybe it's nothing, but it doesn't take away from the real politics, more cynical interpretation of the tit for tats in the Middle East. But it might I suppose it gives maybe some texture to it. You remember one of the strikes from Iran on Tel Aviv was hit down the road from the Mossad headquarters, and so depending on your worldview, you were like, "Wow, yeah, they sent a message," or you were like, 500 yards. Wow, your tech is really shit. Well, here's a video of it from another angle. Oh wait, did I send you the right one? I might have sent you the wrong vid. It should be the X user should be my Lord Bebo. Hang on, Scotty. Sorry, this one. And it's CCTV footage from across the street as you see the strike come in. So Mossad HQ is somewhere down to your right off screen. And this is the incoming missile. This has been shown all over the Middle East this week, by the way. Now that is an explosion. That hit something. Unlike the others, which, made some mud and a little crater, that actually caused a fairly, not pretty good explosion.
It turned all the lights out in the street.
And it caused an outage. So
the
Iranian...
electricity box or something.
That's what the Israelis reported.
It just accidentally hit an electricity box. It's pretty coincidental, but whatever.
Oh, well, for what it's worth, this is what Iranian TV has been telling its population was hit. Iranian state television has confirmed that the Iranian missile strike on Israel took out their most advanced American-made ANTPY-2 ballistic missile detection radar with a $500 million price tag. It was destroyed by a precision strike in central Tel Aviv. The Israelis had placed a decoy of this radar in the Nevatim airbase, but they failed to trick the Iranian missile forces, who managed to find and destroy the real radar. The destruction of this radar would explain why the Israelis have increasingly failed to intercept attacks carried out by the resistance since. For example, Hamas launched rocket attacks on Israel, on Tel Aviv, on the anniversary, which the Israelis failed to intercept. So if you scroll down, this is the piece of equipment, the ANTPY-2 system. Oh, it's been fact-checked. Okay.
Sitting right beside the road, like a highway.
Too close to be noticed. Apparently, this possibly disguised as
strange place.
An electrical
that looks
substation.
like a boulevard, with palm trees and lights, dual carriageway, whatever. They have it sitting alongside the road. Maybe, but I don't know why you'd put it there. It's almost like it's on the sidewalk.
Right. Okay.
Them Iranians are full of shit.
I
don't know. Sometimes they are.
Maybe, well, I thought it was interesting as well, because the Grey Zone's Jeffrey Lafredo, he's an American journalist. He was in Israel. Brave man. They arrested him. I think they've since released him, but arrested and beat him up for visiting this very site to report on that strike.
Really?
Yeah, that's where he was.
Did he take any pictures?
I don't know. No, they took him and 4 other guys, maybe other Grey Zone guys, had all their equipment
And what did he
taken
see?
from them.
Did he say what he saw?
He hasn't been released yet. He's been released from prison, but he's still in Israel. He hasn't had a chance to speak yet. That suggested to me that the Israelis are particularly sensitive about
He went there specifically to that site.
to cover it, because his interest was piqued because a PBS reporter had already been there. I remember that news report we saw of him standing at it. So I thought, well, so what? It's already been shown, and that's what Max Blumenthal is saying. Why was this such a? We only sent someone there it's already been aired, but the American mainstream journalist was probably in the know to just mention, not to do any actual reporting or investigation, and they maybe wanted to. They seemed they were sensitive about it, to risk, having the blowback and the U.S. State Department down their backs.
Do you see how quickly it comes in as well? It's obviously not a ballistic missile. It's not the kind of missiles that landed in Israel. They're in the last wave, like that were.
It looked.
They were obviously relatively slow. Coming
Hypersonic
down,
re-entry. if nothing else.
But that was more like that looks more like a missile. You know, like from a jet or something like that.
Yeah.
You know? I wonder if it was the Russians. Who knows? But I don't know. It's hard to know what was actually hit there. You know. And why is there? Maybe it's just the camera. Why is there a line? It looks like a laser or something.
I think they've just paused its track to show you this is the boy coming in,
Really?
and then they play it again.
Put it back up. 'Cause I saw it. I think I saw it in real time, and it you know, without any delay or any pausing of the video, and they paused it there, but
They paused.
when they don't, there's a video I think of it when it's not paused. Does it show it again in this? No.
No, this is
But even without the pause, you see that streak. You know.
suggesting high speed.
I don't know. What is it suggesting? Maybe it's just the camera or something, showing the trail from the engine and missile or something, but super fast, you know. There. That's something, yeah. Sounds like
Maybe
something.
related, maybe not. This week, Israel was announced by the Pentagon. Actually, Israel is going to get some new gear. The THAAD THAAD. Americans. Well, there's two stories really rolled into one. One, they're getting this gear. And look at the headline: the American soldiers to operate THAAD missile defense system in Israel. The subheading is: the decision would be implemented in an attempt to prepare for an Iranian response to an Israel strike. So they're thinking that's the justification for why they want the gear now. But of course, there could also be that simply because Israel's air defense was
Not very good.
not good at all as it was,
missiles,
and they need an upgrade.
Yeah. That THAAD system is for it can shoot down quite a high altitude. It's maybe 150 kilometers high or whatever.
So it's like
The idea is-
Patriot but bigger range.
Well, Patriot's crap, like but it's for higher altitude ballistic missiles, and to try and target them because it's very hard to target them on their descent because that's when they're gaining a lot of speed and they're going, you know, hypersonic, maybe, you know, fast, thousands of kilometers an hour, but on their ascent and at the top of the arc, let's say, they're not very fast. They're much more easy to shoot down because they're not traveling as fast. So you want, and they go quite high. So you need a system like this to target them at that on the upward trajectory or at the top, you know, because coming down at that speed, it's like crazy to try and.
They're so fast.
Yeah, it's the speed that just.
And the thing you're launching up is very slow at the beginning. Yeah,
exactly.
anyway.
Yeah, but it's just the physics of it are at that speed are very difficult to effectively
intercept high up. Well, that's what this THAAD is for. I mentioned that it's two stories in one. American soldiers to operate.
Yeah.
That's a first as well.
That's what
they're going to have
Ukraine.
U.S. personnel in Ukraine. Now, people who are like America firsters and not pro-Israel immediately smelled blood in the water because they're like, oh yeah, we know what's happening here. This is hostages, so that if Iran hits them, that's a tripwire for American involvement in. But maybe the interpretation is better seen through the other lens you said before, that it's Americans egging on up the escalatory ladder.
Yeah.
Not to be forced to intervene. Oh, geez, our hands are tied.
Yeah. I think they're careful
but
about
to
it.
precipitate an actual hot war between.
Yeah, if there is a plan to
Iran
do
and
that, to escalate it beyond the kind of contrived tit for tat that's been going on so far, then it's going to be done on a specific time frame at a specific time of their choosing,
and it involves Trump,
that is maybe variable depending on what happens in US politics and other global politics. There'd be a decision to push the button on the escalation for very specific reasons, depending on what unfolds. So it's very hard to predict when that would actually happen. It's dependent on other events that are as yet open in terms of how they'll manifest, So
The outcome of this U.S. election.
US election and other global events, they probably take a bunch of other things into consideration, because obviously when you
Ukraine,
estimate
how
Ukraine's
close is Russia to?
but it would immediately that kind of escalation would immediately have economic implications, so that has to be considered as well. I mean, you don't just on a whim choose to crash the global economy.
Yeah, you do it when all your ducks are lined up.
Right.
Yeah. Scotty, there's no chat visible to us here. Are people chatting or?
Yes, but Restream's live chat is kind of broken again today.
Hmm.
I can't even post a comment myself saying, "Hey, everybody, it's broken," because it's kind of locked up like last week.
Okay. Are they still chatting away, but we just can't see it?
Not much.
Okay.
There are some comments though. They can't comment.
The stream is still going. We're not talking to ourselves.
No. Yeah, the stream is still going.
Okay, good.
Good to know. We're not just shooting the breeze on our own here.
So yeah, just 3 weeks to go. To the most important election ever.
It's all gone a bit quiet about the election, hasn't it?
Quiet? Well,
Yeah.
not on Twitter, but yeah,
Well, but relatively, I expected it to have reached a crescendo.
reaching a crescendo.
At this point, to
Yeah.
really be getting there. But it's like, I mean, I think at least for some people, for a lot of people, especially maybe conservatives, but the hurricane, the storm in North Carolina and the damage it did there, and then also the second hurricane that wasn't a hurricane, well, almost wasn't a hurricane, Milton, have kind of like distracted people a little bit, or just changed their focus over that period of time, and changed their focus in terms of what they're talking about and what they're tweeting, It's kind of good in a certain sense, because it's better than them going rah rah rah, my candidate's better than your candidate, and because that's real world stuff, It's like, oh look, storm just wiped out X number of towns in the mountains in North Carolina, and the government isn't doing very much to help us. I think that's important.
I was seeing, rants on YouTube and X where people are like, who live there, maybe they already have a presence. One guy was a permaculture, something kind of prepper type. And he just did 15 minutes. He's in between helping out his neighbors and stuff, and he does a short rant, and he's like, here we are. They had just announced, indeed, before that Helene storm hit, that they were sending 8 billion more to Israel and 22 billion more to Ukraine. They were ranting. That was the main connection. He got 2 million views, and he was just like, can we get some help here? And all the comments are... So yeah, I think that pinged with people in a big way.
Yeah.
That's usually what happens, isn't it? It's reality that intercedes with
it needs to stop
the
this
game
bullshit,
show.
Because like Trump, jeez, I mean, I'm trying hard, but I'm trying hard to.
Well, we're 3 weeks out.
Trying hard with
predictions.
I'm trying hard with the cope, to still see him as a.
As what, the savior?
Well, he's a decent guy or whatever, but when I see him recently talking about Israel and stuff and just sucking up the Israeli lobby big time, it's just, I go, that guy's, I mean, maybe it's possible that he's just, like, the pass I've given him is that he's all talk, and that has been borne out, that he talks a lot, and he'll say a lot of stuff, but when it comes down to it, he's a practical person, and he is still focused on, I just want, like, my support of Trump, such as it is, over the years has been that his main driving force has been effectively isolationism, comparative isolationism, i.e. America pulls its horns in and focuses on doing what's best for America internally and, to a more limited extent externally, but no foreign wars, no dumping money in other countries, no starting foreign wars, less American empire and more make America great again at home, and that's why I preferred him to any of the opposition and the Democrats, because they are literally just the establishment party and the war party, and they'll continue to do what America has done for the past 100 years, which is expand its empire and cause chaos around the world and manipulate and control other countries, or try to. Whereas he has always, was born out in his first in his first term, that he didn't start any wars, and he seems to talk the talk, but when he talks this way about Israel, I mean, that's where I kind of draw a line. Like if he's going to follow through on doubling down on support for Israel, sending them more weapons so they can finish the job in Gaza.
Did he say that?
No, he didn't say that explicitly, but when he says when he just has been doubling down on we'll support Israel 100%, I will make Israel great again, and lamenting the decline. He actually lamented the decline of the Israel lobby.
Yeah,
it's like talking about that. That's the lobby that subverts your own system of government. Your domestic policies are subverted by the Israel lobby, and you're doubling down on supporting them. It's like
I fall back on the fact that these two wars happened after he was removed from office. And he was removed from office. They didn't happen while he was in. Now the anti-empire skeptics go, yeah, but he laid the foundations for it. I know. He boasts about it. No one sanctioned Russia like he did. He gave the first... Well, he didn't. He gave some key weaponry to Ukraine, but Ukraine was already being built up, we now know, since 2014 by massive NATO, CIA network funding and training. And as for Israel-Palestine, again, not while he was in office. Surely if he's the ultra-Israel hawk, it happens while he's there. You can't escape that basic fact of timing, that the two current massive gaping wounds on the planet that threaten a maelstrom of global catastrophe happened when he left.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
And I'll recall your own words in pointing out when Soleimani was assassinated. He got up and he said, I did this to prevent a war.
Well, he better stick with it, or he's on my shit list.
Do you think, well, you're assuming, this all assumes he's going to win. After 2 years of predictions, what's our final prediction? Trump's going to win.
Well, like we said many times before, if there's any intimation, any possibility of vote rigging, then there's no way to predict anything.
Unless it's so damn big, they can't rig their way out of it.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? And obviously, if it was a free and fair election, I think the chances are very high that he would win. But if it's not a free and fair election, then. But God forbid we get Kamala as president. Like, oh my God, I'll just switch off the internet forever.
No, you won't.
Yeah, I'm not listening to that.
You'll be listening to cackling for 4 years.
No chance.
Hillary Jr.
No chance.
Yes, you will.
Stupid Hillary.
A stupider version, yeah.
Dumb Hillary. So what else? What are you going to go on to there? What are you segment into? Nothing in particular. What about that storm?
Nothing.
What about Milton?
There's an article here about that Milley, remember, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs?
He's going to get impeached.
He's retired.
He's going to get subpoenaed, or he's going to get...
He fears being court-martialed. What? How? Apparently, you can recall someone, even though they're retired.
Yeah.
Get them in a uniform to court-martial them after the fact, so to speak. Why would he be so afraid of Trump? That what would possibly? And it doesn't. The Guardian article I read about it didn't articulate. He said, "Well, Trump clashed with him during his 4 years. What about? Why don't you tell? Do tell." And this is based on revelations by Bob Woodward for his latest fucking book on Trump. He's such a slime ball, Woodward. what his slime ball turned out to be, because he's not saying what it is. Milley was probably, I have to say probably because I don't know that. There's a lot that's still unsaid. Lead coordinator for January 6th.
Hmm.
That was a military coup. And Trump knows who else was doing it. Other retired guy, shithead from commander of US force in Afghanistan, Stanley McChrystal, overseer of the drone and torture programs there. He probably, with Milley and some other guy, all of them, the Guardian says, fear being court-martialed. Well, what's so afraid?
So
Why
those
is-
guys were they're military men. Though. That would be an FBI job on January 6th.
They're military men. They're CIA career boys. They're kind of the parallel military.
Yeah, but surely,
Especially McChrystal. He's not really. This all comes out of the 60s when the CIA accrued so much, like a parasite. It gets so much from the actual Pentagon system, it becomes a de facto military within the military, you know.
Yeah. So I just want to say something about Hurricane Milton that everybody freaked out about. It was there was a possibility we're going to have to upgrade it to a Category 6, create a new level on the hurricane scale. Category 6, a new one, because it was so.
Yeah,
it was so momentous, so crazy, so mad.
It killed hundreds of people.
It was going to just, yeah. I mean, there's at least one meteorologist was crying on camera when he was reporting about it as it approached land and stuff.
I remember the videos, 15-foot surges. They recreated them with CGI. Yeah.
And like, for some reason, I'm not a meteorologist, but for some reason, like a good 24 hours or more before it actually hit land, I was able to say that it was probably going to be a Category 1 storm and not going to do any, there's going to be little or no storm surge in Tampa, which there was none.
How do you do that?
And, well, just looking at some models and stuff, I don't know why these weren't available. They were available, I don't know why they weren't interpreted. I think it was some kind of a mass hysteria after Hurricane Helene. People were just worked up, and also people are generally worked up, and they're looking, they're feeling like something bad is in the air. There's a lot of tension, a lot of stress, a lot of nervousness, and then this hurricane was something they could project that onto and say, oh, look, you see, it is really bad.
Free-floating anxiety.
Free-floating anxiety projected onto this hurricane, and the poor hurricane, which is only ever going to be a Category 1 when it landed, was turned into a Category 6, possibly.
Yeah.
A new scale. So, and just, I mean, this is, where's this? This is the Storm Prediction Centre, so it's the NOAA's National Weather Service. If you just, the interesting thing about it was that it spawned tornadoes, which isn't that unusual, but they were fairly powerful. So this is showing for that day, 10th and 9th, so it was on the 10th, or the day before until the morning of the 10th. And at the top there you have, first one is, you see, scroll down, tornado reports. So it shows all the reports, reported tornadoes. There are quite a few, but if you go down to the next section, which is the interesting one for our purposes here, wind reports. To the top was all the reported tornadoes, but so these wind reports are all from different stations. US lots of different ones. You see them on the right there. All these different sensors, wind sensors, international airport measurements. Tampa International, Daytona Beach International Airport. But anyway, the interesting thing is, like, I'll just show you at the top. You see the top ones? Third one down on the left, 92. That's speed, miles an hour. So these are wind reports, maximum speed reports, maximum wind speed reports.
Observed after she's passed
No,
through.
yeah, as it's going through. Yeah. I mean, these are the reports of what the measuring stations recorded in terms of maximum wind speeds. 92. If you scroll down and just keep it slowly scroll down, you see all the others less than 92, 60s, 70s, 60s, 70s, and down at the bottom,
there's 180 there.
a few 80s, whatever, up to 87. But the only other two are at the very bottom, in the last four there. You see the very bottom one, 92. That's another 92, and 3 above is another 92. So the highest wind speeds recorded were 392s. All others were less than 92. Now, just so in case anybody wants to know, have a look at this. At the very top, this is from the unimpeachable source called Wikipedia, which is, okay for some things like the Saffir-Simpson scale, which is the scale that classifies hurricanes. And on the right, in that nice multicolored rainbow flag box, you can see the categories from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then TS is tropical storm, TD is tropical depression. So category 1 at the very bottom, if you look across to miles per hour, the winds, the region of winds that define a category 1 storm are 74 to 95 miles per hour. And we just saw from all of the sensors that the highest wind speeds were 92, putting it firmly in, and most of them in the lower end or in the mid region of a category 1 storm. So there were no winds recorded that put that hurricane at more than category 1.
But in everyone's mind, it was a category 5 or 6.
So what are we going to go with here? What actually it was, or what it was in people's minds? Well, you choose.
Yeah.
That's just an example of how that kind of, like you kind of said, free-floating anxiety gets projected onto things and people build it up. And the media, and even scientist types who are meant to be super sober and clinical and analytical, they were all behind it. Oh my God.
I know.
Worst storm of the century. Everyone's going to die.
I saw your lefty types going, oh God, this is climate change. The God of science is punishing us for not, recycling straws. And then I saw the right, Alex Jones was tweeting things like, this is weather modification for the Great Reset. Like, what the fuck is going on? Everyone's losing their minds over Milton.
And it's actually not. I mean, there was very little storm surge anywhere because of the way the winds were blowing. They were blowing offshore than onshore. Very little storm surge to none of these massive flooding. There was flooding, significant flooding, for a short period of time due to rain. And that's the really interesting thing about this storm and many other storms that have been happening around the world for quite a few number of years and have been increasing in intensity. We have a much larger quantity of rain, of water vapor basically, and precipitation in these storms. Whereas before a storm would come along, it would come over the sea, reach land. It would be a storm not far from where it reached land. It might track a little bit for a certain distance up, whatever, dropping some rain here and there, but then it would actually peter out. But today you're seeing storms come in like that, and they dump a bunch of rain as soon as they get to land. Well, they're dumping rain at sea. They dump rain at when they make landfall. They continue on, maybe have a little break for a few hundred kilometers, then dump a bunch more rain, like large amounts in a small period of time, and then keep on going and dump some more up there. So they're just loaded. These systems are much more loaded with rain than they have been in the past. It's been going on for quite a long time. I mean, we do the Earth Changes Summary every month, and you can see that going back years now, it's been dominated by floods, all around the world.
The one reliable set of metrics has been the record-breaking rainfall. Mm-hmm. And you see that records that are 3 years old are then broken in specific locales. For sure. No one's doing a cumulative. They should. You think the global warming would be all over this, over this rich data. It's obvious. It falls. It's rain. It's measurable.
And it fits with the whole global warming thing because it is very likely global warming. The planet is warming in different areas, spottily here, there. It can be colder in one place and warmer in another place, but the oceans are also warming, especially in the northern hemisphere. And that's causing more evaporation, which provides for more rainfall. But it also leads to this belt of precipitation that runs around about the equator level, just above it or whatever. It causes monsoons in various different places around the equator, like in South America, in the rainforest, in equatorial Africa, in Asia, in those areas. And for thousands of years, I suppose, that's where the monsoon areas are, where you get massive downpours at certain periods of time in the year. But that band tends to move north towards oceans and maybe even land masses that are hotter, that are warmer. So as the northern hemisphere warms up, and the oceans in particular get warmer, that band tends to move north. It's been causing a greening of the desert in the Sahara. Mm-hmm. It's been in the news quite often recently, where you're having like lakes forming in the Sahara, and that's going up spottily in different places and contributing to these massive downpours in short periods of time, and it's landing on ground that isn't suitable to that kind of a downpour. The ground around the equator is very porous. After thousands of years of this kind of monsoon type rainfall, the ground has kind of formed or developed or adjusted to allow that kind of absorption and runoff. And the cities and towns that are built there have built themselves, like in Florida even, where it rains a lot. They have these downpours. The structure, the infrastructure is built for it. But when it moves further north, especially in the USA and in Europe, into places like Spain and France and Italy and Eastern Europe, and lands on towns or runs into towns, the land is, a lot of it's very clay-like, not very kind of impermeable, semi-impermeable, just runs off, creates torrents running into towns. The towns aren't built for it. The sewage systems, the runoff systems aren't built for it, and you just have massive flooding. And it's been happening a lot, and it seems like it's increasing. It's going to become more and more prevalent.
So you're saying global warming is real?
I'm saying, yeah, it is, yeah. Well, I've never had a problem with global warming.
Greta Thunberg likes you.
Well, no,
you're pro-Palestine and global warming.
Well, the only bone of contention would be, I would say that it's not humans causing it.
Oh.
Then I'd be kicked out.
Oh,
I think that's
I think for membership of that club, you have to. Yeah.
I think that's the whole point. Saying global warming is only a kind of it's the entree to the main dish, which is humans are doing this.
Yeah.
Whereas I would be like, yeah, global warming is happening. It's obvious. You can measure the temperatures and stuff. You can measure the temperatures of the oceans. You can see that it's warming, not uniformly, but that
you can't do anything about it.
And it's not humans. It's part of a natural cycle. And the real problem is that as more precipitation falls further north, then it falls around the poles, as in similar quantities as large amounts of snow, which ice turns into ice, snow, major build-up around the polar regions, North Pole, Arctic Circle, and that then extends down. You get a lot of build-up, and then you get an ice age. So global warming leads to global cooling. At some point.
In our lifetimes.
Yeah, I think it happens a lot faster than people, scientist type people think. So it could well be in our lifetime, yeah. Be a tipping point.
So
and then would progressively,
the sea levels aren't rising.
No, not at all, no.
Because that's the essential model basis for the future for global warming. Man caused it, and it's going to flood all the coastal zones.
Yeah, it's actually, in the end, in the final analysis, it would actually cause sea levels to drop.
Yeah.
Because of the build-up of
ice.
Basically precipitation, so evaporation from seas, and then build-up of ice. So a lot of the water in the oceans will be stored as ice.
Yeah. I mentioned it in August, I think, in connection with some other flooding. That single volcanic eruption, the Hunga Tunga one, in Tonga.
Was it actually called Hunga Tunga? Or did you just
I think that's the name of the volcano, yeah. It's a subsea volcanic system.
Sounds like you made it up.
No. Look it up.
You weren't being racist. Hunga Tunga, okay.
No, they did.
Hunga Tunga in
the
Tonga.
analysis come in after, a couple of years. It's been 2 years, I think. And that single eruption threw into the stratosphere 10% of the atmosphere's water content today. 10% in one eruption.
Yeah.
People are like, where's all the rain coming from? Well, that's probably part of it.
People have no idea what can go down.
The death toll from Hurricane Helene, officially it's still around 250, but even the White House said a few days after the event, 600 people are still missing. They're being coy about. They're not really updating. There must be numbers. I saw one anecdotal story, News Report yesterday. 11 members of one family were killed in Western North Carolina. For what it's worth, if it reaches 400, Helene will enter the top 10 worst hurricanes in the US for fatalities.
Mm-hmm.
However, the catch to that is what we're just talking about. Helene didn't do that by being a hurricane.
No.
The winds weren't, especially in North Carolina,
Yeah.
it was the rain.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, it wasn't Helene per se that dumped the rain. It was feeding it of course, there was great bands going northwards. There was another system there that was loaded with moisture as well. And the two of them converged and did that. So that speaks, again, people are focused on the hurricane, but that's not the real story. It's whatever mechanisms are giving rise to, for example, higher water content in the atmosphere. I suspect it's talked about on the fringes of science, increased cosmic rays, which provide nucleation for more rainfall, increased cloud coverage, more precipitation. And they're all focused on CO2, and it causes heat, and then the heat evaporates the oceans. And then that's too simple and too low level. There's all these other things as well that
the warming is happening from inside the planet, not from the atmosphere. Most of the warming, directly indirectly provoked by what you just made, cosmic rays and all that kind of stuff, the thinning of the electro, what do you call it, the
magnetic field.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which is erratic, yeah.
Yeah.
Thinner at times.
And it can cause earthquakes as well. Those cosmic rays can cause earthquakes. South Atlantic anomaly.
Yeah.
There's one there. Which is
that's where there's
a gap in the magnetic field around the planet, which protects us from solar rays, and that particular area is being bombarded with. It's less protection, so it's being bombarded with solar and cosmic rays, and it's prone to methane outgassing because you have little fractures that happen because those rays destabilize the crust or whatever, and it opens up and lets a lot of methane out of the seabed, which actually contributes to precipitation, the genesis of rainfall. When you have mass amount of methane outgassing from the seabed, and there have been documented mass outgassing from there in
earlier this year
at that anomaly, a place where they call it the South Atlantic anomaly. And it's an anomaly because it's an anomaly in the magnetic field around the Earth.
Yeah, and I don't think this contradicts. I think my understanding of the anomaly is that it's actually a part of the North Pole, the magnetic north that's manifesting in the south.
Yeah, well, I don't think they really know exactly. It's about a bit
and that there are
confusing.
other pockets where the north is now down here, and vice versa. That's how wonky it is, and that's changed in our lifetime.
Yeah, you look it up on Wikipedia. It's called the South Atlantic anomaly.
The other change, I mean, the first change that occurred that they've noticed in the 80s was the ozone layer.
That went away.
People have put that to bed for two reasons. One, they satisfied themselves that it's because of man-made CFCs, gases we produce. So there's a whole raft of legislation, and then that's not allowed anymore to some extent. I don't know about China in the East, but certainly in the West. And then they stopped talking about it. Not because it went away. What they realized later was that ozone layer has a kind of a periodicity to it. It rhythmically expands and contracts, expands and contracts. So that was a natural phenomenon, which may indeed be exacerbated in this time. It's gas how people learned about it, and it was their first introduction to what you're doing to the planet. And that's BS. It's indeed a real thing, and it's really happening, and maybe it's getting worse, and the hole becomes larger with each passing. But that speaks to a natural phenomenon that's taking place. We should be paying attention to.
Not allowed to, because it's all humans did it. How can you? You're trying to get the blame off humans? Don't be silly. Humans did it. You gotta wear masks to not kill Granny and recycle to save the ozone layer and stop global warming. So yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah. Have you been out in town recently? No.
No, I avoid people.
Do you?
As
Yeah.
much as I can.
I was out in town yesterday and I saw a midget getting pickpocketed.
A midget. Joe, we don't use that term anymore.
Whatever,
Yeah.
I couldn't believe someone would stoop so low.
So you sympathise with him.
Yeah, yeah.
You weren't making fun of him. Good, good.
Anyway,
that is low.
That's
really
pretty
low.
low, like the pickpocket midget.
On a number of levels.
More than one. Yeah, so anyway, on that note, we will leave it there for this week, folks. Thanks for listening, watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back next week with another one. Until then, have a good week. See ya.
Thanks for watching. Bye all.
Can't stop the signal, Mel.